Welcome on in. This is the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast, the Week 6 preview show. John McKechnie and Mario Puig running through every single game on this week's slate. A lot of injuries to unpack and some tough lineup decisions out there. Some bye weeks as well, causing additional lineup strain. So let's go ahead and sort that out for y'all. Let's start the show. Welcome on in. This is the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast for NFL Week 6. John McKechnie, Mario Puig, hanging out with you on this fine Thursday. Mario, how are we doing today?
Oh, all right. I don't know. It's rainy. It's not particularly enjoyable, I suppose. And I didn't win my fab bid on Keontae Ingram, so actually I'm bad, John. I'm not doing well.
All right, we're gonna try to pick you up here.
How about you?
Well, I'll go ahead and start by rubbing it in your face that I did get Keontae Ingram in my NFFC league, and I bid less for him than you did. So,
well, I'm real happy for you, I think, but that's not fair. Pulling the alarm on that one, calling the mods.
That's I expect them at my door shortly. But beyond that, any other free agent pickup interest for you this week after Fabs have run?
So I guess I only looked at NFFC, and I guess most leagues I don't know if this is a public league thing or where people are fishbowl maybe. They had waivers that ran Tuesday night, I guess, and whereas NFFC is Wednesday. So on Tuesday, everybody had taken it as a foregone conclusion, and I didn't even realize this, but people took it as a foregone conclusion that Emari Demercado was the running back in Arizona after James Conner, which I would not assume that, but a lot of people did. And I saw this whole thing about, the reaction to the Cardinals issuing a depth chart on Wednesday morning saying that Keontae Ingram was the number 2 running back and Emari Demercado was the 3rd. So a bunch of people were kind of like, what the heck? How did that happen? And I don't know what they thought was going on. I don't know who got people down that path of assuming that Demercado was some sort of item of interest. I don't personally think that he is. And yet in my NFFC league where we had the knowledge that Ingram was ahead of Demercado on the listed depth chart, Demercado still went for about 8% more, 8 points more. It was 301, I guess, out of $1,000 fab budget that Demercado went for in this league. And Keontae Ingram went like 230 or something. I put in like 197, and I thought I was overdoing it. I thought I was like, oh, they're gonna roast me. They're gonna call me a big idiot for this. But I whatever. What else am I spending the fab on? And it turned out nothing, because didn't get Ingram, and now this is a league where I am 3rd in the league, and I had Nick Chubb and J.K. Dobbins. So I'm pretty bitter about the whole thing. I feel like this team would be a juggernaut if not for the cruel idiocy of injury chance. So it's really actually kind of like grinding my gears a little bit. I'm a little bit steamed.
No, understandably so. So you and I, very similar thought process with our drafting this year, especially when it came to getting as much Chubb and Dobbins as possible. And by the end of week 2, that dream was dead, basically. So,
oh yeah.
But now other people are feeling the burn. Obviously, with Austin Eckler's been out for a while. We think he's going to be back this week. Justin Jefferson obviously hitting IR. Devin Achane hitting IR this week as well. So it's tough. There's a lot to unpack here, and let's get it started with the Thursday night game. We have the Kansas City Chiefs playing host to the Denver Broncos, who continue their impressive downward trajectory. You give up 31 points to the Jets. That's egregious. That's in the same bucket as giving up 28 points to the Bears, at least at that point in the season, although the Bears now are clearly a wagon, and that will continue. But beyond that, Chiefs 10.5-point favorites in this one. What are you looking for from a fantasy lens here? And I want to kind of get your thoughts, a little quarter poll check-in on one Rashee Rice, who I think it continues to kind of work his way up.
Yeah, I love Rice. I don't understand why Andy Reid handles receivers the way that he does. I feel like he could improve his process. The underlying assumptions that he makes could maybe be re-examined, because to me, it looks like the Chiefs, it's not just that they could use Rashee Rice more, it's that they need him. It's that if he is not the answer to the question that they face, they're in a hell of a lot of trouble. And it's so glaringly obvious to me, and it's frustrating to me that Andy Reid is still doing this thing where like the 20 snaps for this guy, 20 snaps for this guy. I don't think there's any matchup, like personnel matchup based reason for doing that. I think it's borderline just superstitious. The simple fact is Sky Moore, the way they're using him, is not drawing targets rapidly enough to justify his snaps. The same fact would be true of Marcus Valdes-Scantling, but at least Marcus Valdes-Scantling has the decoy utility. Sky Moore doesn't even have that. Kadarius Toney doesn't do anything really. It's just a joke that we still talk about him like he's an important player or something. He's not. He's a wide receiver 4 or 5, and one not even worth the trouble, as it were. So the Chiefs just have this void, this howling void, aside from Travis Kelce in the passing game. And Mahomes factor or not, Kelce being as great as ever, even if that's a given, that's still not enough. This team had more every other year that they won the Super. Even Juju Smith-Schuster, like his knee apparently, got worse in the offseason, but he was producing at a level no one similar to the Chiefs roster right now is at receiver. So Rashee Rice has mostly been worked in the slot, and I feel like the simple next step to the Chiefs offense getting better, whoever they got to take the snaps from, even if it's Sky Moore, I would say Justin Watson, but if they have to take snaps from Sky Moore or Kadarius Toney to give it to Rice outside, then they have to do it because he's the real deal. And on a per snap basis, he's been very good. The numbers don't jump out, I realize, but there's just some really clearly positive peripheral indicators in Rashee Rice's production, like specifically drawing a lot of targets per snap, Admittedly, low depth of target, 5.7 yards. If he raises that depth of target to what it should be, something like 9 or 10, the target rate per snap will go down a little, but he can afford that. He's got 24 on 120 snaps. So if he's averaging a target, however many every that's not 5, is it? I can't do the math on it, but that's a lot.
Targeted on a route 30% of the time.
Yeah, that's a really high target rate. And I know he had a couple drops, but the perspective that's key here is that he's still catching 70.8% of his targets. If he drops a certain number of passes and he still is way above, certainly any other Chiefs receiver, and certainly a general standard of good, then the drops don't matter. Point blank, they just do not matter. And it's hard to get people to understand that. Maybe Randy Reid is one of those people who's struggling to get it, but I do think not in this game. The Broncos are a pushover, but if the Chiefs have to struggle or lose against the Chargers in Week 7, I think that might be the desperation factor to force Andy Reid to do the smart thing, even if he doesn't, correctly understand it in the meantime.
And, speaking of Sky Moore, what do you do with him at this point? He's someone that had some pretty significant draft helium over the course of August in particular, and we're not really looking at a whole lot as far as the production goes. A high of 70 yards, that was all the way back in Week 2. That was when he scored his only touchdown of the season, not drawing, or he's had 4 combined targets over the last 2 weeks. Just 2 catches in that span, gets a little bit involved in the run game. But, I mean, this isn't a guy that you can start right now, but at the same time, it is Denver tonight. So what do you do with him?
Him, Kadarius Toney, I don't know what to tell anyone to do with them. They will be a certain level of productive per snap, especially against a team like the Broncos, but you can't bank on them getting more than like 30 snaps. So as far as why Moore isn't producing, it's really simple in my opinion, and it's a really foreseeable thing, and it's discouraging to me that Andy Reid doesn't get it. I can't tell if he's trying to force guys like Moore and Toney onto the field in those spots that there are reps available to sort of suit the interests of Brett Veach, the GM. I don't know if Brett Veach is pressing on him, like get my crappy draft picks on the field so I don't look like the idiot I am. But Sky Moore is playing entirely out of position. They're lining him up most of the time outside. It needs to be the other way around. He needs to mostly be in the slot. So if there were one simple switch to make the Chiefs offense a lot better, I would say it's that they need to get Rice outside on the reps where Moore is. And if there's slot snaps up for grabs after that, move Moore into those. Moore is a slot receiver. It's like a more extreme version of what we saw in Arizona when they misused Christian Kirk for 4 years as an outside receiver to leave Larry Fitzgerald, his grandfathered reps in the slot. And in this case, I don't know why they won't just use Moore in the slot. It's like they just decided we need to make him an outside receiver to make that draft pick look good. So we're going to use him there, even if he isn't any good at it. Like, he's too short. And I don't know why he can't. I guess it would be something like the start stop, the change of direction. Maybe he's a little too linear to be maybe his routes are predictable when he's going vertical on the outside. I don't know. But Sky Moore is a guy you put in the middle of the field and you get him moving fast, and he'll catch passes. I know he had the drops in week 1 or whatever, but normally he doesn't drop passes. His whole thing at Western Michigan is you send him over the middle, he catches it no matter what kind of hit he takes, and oftentimes he'll like bounce off that hit and run for another 60 yards. Like, that's what Sky Moore is supposed to be used as, and they're just point blank using him in a way that doesn't at all resemble that. So it's their fault. It's not necessarily Moore's fault, but it is a real limitation with Moore. Like, it's just not going to work for him outside. It might work in the slot, but Andy Reid just seems to be getting further away from the answer as far as I see it.
So, yeah, at this point, he's bottom of your roster on the bench, or maybe even droppable in even like 12.
Definitely would rather have Rice. I think Rice, like, they're going to get bad results. They're going to need to change something, and Moore would benefit from moving into the slot, but the solution, whatever way it goes, has to be getting Rice on the field. I'm a little worried, though, because Veach did the whole thing of like, we have a wide receiver one. His name is Kadarius Toney. I'm a little worried they're going to try to force the Toney thing again before they make the right answer of going with Rice, but that's the way it's going to go. They can't avoid such an obvious answer forever.
No, I don't think so either. So that, they'll eventually pull out of it. But for now,
Chiefs are in trouble, man. They're gonna roll teams like the Broncos every time, but this is not a Super Bowl team, not even close.
No, to me, like the Niners are the wagon of wagons right now. It's crazy.
Yeah, the whole league folded for them. It's unbelievable. I hate this league. I hate the owners. Hate the front offices. Hate you guys.
Shaking my fist at all of them. Let's see. A couple last items on this game before we move on. If you're making a showdown slate tonight, Pacheco captain?
Sure. I haven't looked at the salaries, but I don't know, man. Pretty much anybody on the Chiefs offense could be the answer, because the Broncos are so incredibly bad on defense that, I just was bashing them. But if you give Kadarius Toney 5 catches against this defense, he might get 180 yards. I mean, they're not exactly good at tackling, So anybody can go off, but Pacheco is at least in the last couple of games, they've been dependent on him to a degree they haven't been dependent on any running back at any point in Pat Mahomes. Pat Mahomes was always doing more, even when they had like Kareem Hunt or whoever else we might name. So they're dependent on Pacheco the last couple of weeks. I just don't know if that's going to remain the case here. He'll definitely be good with however much usage he gets, though.
And then on the Broncos side of things, we're looking at Javonte Williams being back in the fold. What are your expectations for him, and does that necessitate a move for McLaughlin to your bench?
I don't know, man. I feel like it's so tough to get this one right. McLaughlin, of course, is doing a pretty good job. I don't know if I would characterize it as like competitively meaningful snaps that he's taken. To me, he looks kind of like a drawback, a check down guy who's played a lot of reps on an offense that just isn't going anywhere. The defense is kind of just letting them spin their wheels, run out the clock because they're always losing. But he has played well, and it's I guess even more so difficult to know what kind of physical state Javonte Williams is in. I of course was a bit of a critic of his draft hype, because at the time there were a bunch of dodos saying that he's better than Travis Etienne and all this other stuff, and I was pushing back against that. But I didn't mean to like argue Javonte Williams wasn't a good prospect. It was just, to me, he was more like a late second rounder or something. So even as a relative critic in the past, I don't understand why he hasn't done better if he is healthy. So I almost have to conclude he's not healthy. And if that's the case, you can't really put any expectation on him fairly, I just don't know what to do with that. And McLaughlin, in the meantime, it also that's not for nothing, it isn't worthless that he's maybe even a garbage time specialist, because the Broncos are going to have a lot of garbage time to spend this year. So I guess I'd stick with McLaughlin in this. I guess, yeah, because especially if we figure the Chiefs' role here, how stupid would the Broncos look to put Williams out there at less than 100% in a blowout?
No, exactly. And I kind of expect them to, be trailing for long enough in this game to where like the run game just doesn't really ever find much in the way of traction. I expect this to be one of Russell Wilson's busier days of the season, but likely all for naught. And I did a little bit of betting research yesterday, and I believe all home favorites this year that are favored by 10 or more points have covered the spread. So take that for what you will going into tonight's game, although it is a Thursday night game, but didn't seem to bother the Niners against the Giants. Before we get on over to the London game, we got a message from our friends over at Circa. Super Sunday is in Las Vegas this year. There's no better place to catch the big game than poolside at Stadium Swim at Circa Resort and Casino in Las Vegas. A massive 143-foot screen with booming game sound, plus view special pyrotechnics and visual effects throughout the game. Grab the best seat in the sun with day beds, poolside boxes, cabanas, and more. Don't miss Stadium Swim's big game party for February 11th only at Circa Resort and Casino in downtown Las Vegas. Space is going quickly, folks. For more information and to book your seats today, go to circalasvegas.com. That's circalasvegas.com. All right, Mario. Let's talk about the London game. We got the Ravens. We got the Titans. We got the Ravens coming off of just one of the more maddening, frustrating games. Salt in the wound that Lamar Jackson was the highest graded passer by PFF last weekend. 7 drops, depending on where you look. Some people had it charted at 11. It could have been 100 for all I was concerned. Just pathetic showing from the Ravens pass catchers and obviously the special teams gaffe. But I digress. They're in London. They're facing the Titans. Titans obviously coming off the loss as well. Weird week. Ravens 4.5-point favorites. I think that's too many points. I think I like the Titans in this spot. And John Harbaugh's doing the Ted Lasso thing. And even as a guy with a mustache, I'm like, that is not good to me.
What is the Ted Lasso thing? What does that mean?
He's just like, I feel, because he's in England. So he's like, oh, I feel like I'm Ted Lasso.
I bet Mike Vrabel has never said that. I bet
exactly.
Mike Vrabel might have watched a few seconds of Ted Lasso and just he went outside and he got mad and went outside and beat up a nerd. That's Mike Vrabel watching Ted Lasso. I think I know all those things that you said are true, and it's not easily pushed aside, especially because I would characterize the Ravens' offense as more up and down this year than consistently good. But it is in my nature to look at the stats that you mentioned, those drops, and conclude that it sooner means like positive regression is incoming, because I mean, I actually think, Zay Flowers and Mark Andrews both have drop tendencies, but I don't think Bateman does. Duvernay even didn't reel one in. I don't think it was fair to call it a drop. He kind of got headhunted and hit by 2 people on the play, but like Duvernay, that was probably the first pass Duvernay's ever dropped in the NFL. So Aguilar, oh my God, that's a drop merchant for sure, but he wasn't even the one that we have in mind at the moment. So granted, Aguilar can drop some passes coming up that he maybe hasn't dropped in the games to this point. But guys like Andrews, Bateman, Flowers, they're going to have like sprees where they get hot and kind of correct those numbers. Bateman, at least if he gets healthy, I don't know what his health situation is, but I feel like Bateman's first 2 years and his Minnesota career are clear enough that he's good, and that if the numbers aren't there, there's a complicating factor in the meantime that eventually will give way, even if it's really frustrating in the meantime. But yeah, the Ravens need Bateman to step up. The Beckham thing was always I don't think DaCosta gets enough hate for how bad that he is, and he is bad at his job. If Lamar Jackson hadn't miraculously fallen to their second first round pick that one year, people would look at it DaCosta by now and be like, whoa, this guy sucks. But yeah, the Aguilar signing, the Beckham signing, those were two things that they really couldn't do and set the team back. And at a time where there was a window, it was all wide open, and they just blew it because DaCosta is an idiot. So that sucks. But Bateman, I still have hope for, because whereas Beckham is just completely broken down and it's obvious, like every play the guy is hurt that he gets back up. I mean, even the plays where he's not hurt, it's like he's like limping out of every play. It's crazy. So Andrews is a rock, though, not the most consistent pass catcher, I guess you could say, but he is inevitable. And I think the Titans are kind of begging for some of the correction to occur against their defense just by being so tough to run on. And I don't know if I believe they can really do a version of selling out against the pass that doesn't run the risk of cutting loose Lamar as a runner. So I think the Ravens get it together enough to win this, but it's not so much because I think it'll be prettier because they've got everything figured out. It's just, I think the Titans are not a good team, and their offensive line in particular, I know that the Ravens don't have a great pass rush, great front seven or whatever, but the Titans offensive line is so bad that if Tannehill has to throw so many as like 20 passes, the Titans are in harm's way. And I think, I don't know. I don't want to count out the Titans, especially because of the Vrabel factor. I'm still really high on Derrick Henry, and bad offensive line or not, if you let Henry get to 20 carries, your defense is in grave danger at that point. But I still got to take the Ravens. I just feel like the Titans' pass defense is weak, and they kind of like beg offenses to attack them there by being so tough against the run.
So going back to 2020, coming off a loss, the Titans are 12-8-1 against the spread. The Ravens actually are 13-7-1 against the spread, coming off of a loss. Both teams, obviously, in this instance, are in that setup. Matt in the chat notes that Ronnie Stanley can't stay on the field either. Yeah, that injury against Pittsburgh a couple years ago.
The Ravens might have I don't know what you'd call it. Like, is there like a warlock maybe living in the team facilities, just like casting spells from the boiler rooms and all these guys? Like the Ravens, playing for the Ravens is just like, you're going to get hurt. It's going to happen to you, and it's not going to be it's not going to be a sprained ankle. It's going to be like, you're going to get a chronic condition out of this. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's bad. Going back to your points on the Ravens offense and the pass catching group, I think I'm out on Rashad Bateman, man. I don't see it happening.
I understand the despair, but you remember his first 2 years, right? That was 18 games. And he was really good, and then he got hurt, and is lesser than still. I think Zay Flowers is clearly not as good as Bateman when he's healthy. I mean, Flowers does cool stuff sometimes, but we saw the downside too last week. Like, he'll drop plenty of passes, and he's not going to like win the ball in the air like Steve Smith. Like, he kind of needs the separation, and then on that deep ball, he just kind of like couldn't track it when Lamar threw it. Like, he was open and Lamar threw it, and Flowers just like fell on the ground for some reason. Not even because he like lost his footing. He just like couldn't track the ball and like did that thing. Like he did like a receiver equivalent in basketball. Like when you get crossed up and you fall over the wrong way, he did that to himself. And like, that's a problem. You need him to get to that spot. And if he can't get there, then he's not a legitimate downfield receiver, at least not for the amount of slack that they're putting on him. So I think that they need Bateman to get going. And the more that they dink around with his playing time and put Aguilar on the field instead, they're making it tougher for him to get back into a rhythm. And we know what he looks like when he's in rhythm, because his first 2 years, the numbers were just perfectly clean. There's only good indicators in his first 2 years. There's only good indicators in his Minnesota career. What we have bad indicators from is 140 snaps in 4 games this year, while he was playing hurt to an unspecified extent for an unknown amount of that time. So if he's still hurt, then I don't know what gets better. But if Bateman is the player that he was in 2021 and 2022, then big numbers are ahead. And I know it seems impossible right now, but it seems highly unlikely to me that a player like him would just become bad for no discernible explanation. Like it just, like Tampa Bay Michael Clayton is the kind of precedent that we'd need to find for that kind of drop off. And there's only one Tampa Bay Mike Clayton in NFL history.
George Clooney.
I'm sorry, I don't know enough about. Is that the name of a guy that he played?
He was in a film called Michael Clayton.
Oh, that particular Michael. Okay. I don't know many George Clooney things, obviously, but Tampa Bay Mike Clayton, LSU Mike Clayton had a really, really good rookie season back like 20 years ago or whatever. Inexplicably was awful every year after that. So it could happen to Bateman, I guess, but I doubt it.
I'm saying that. I mean, you bring up great points, and like I have enough shares of him in best ball this year to underline the point that I did think that, the talent was legit. I thought when he was healthy last year, obviously a smaller sample, that, he looked like the best receiver on the Ravens and the best receiver they've had in a little bit, but it's come crashing back down. I don't know if the foot injury from last year is still lingering in some way, shape, or form, but the drop in the end zone off of his hands is so seared into my brain. I can't with that guy. I just can't.
Yeah, I mean, it's one play. I guess we'll see.
Yeah, anecdotal, I know, but he's making me
Zay
very
Flowers
mad.
dropped like 3 passes in that game, and everybody loves
Still love him. I don't know.
He's going to keep dropping passes, I'm telling you. He's not that good, in my opinion, of course.
But maybe the catch rate, will eventually make the drops not a huge issue anymore. I don't know. We'll see.
A lot of that's on screens. We'll see. His catch rate is totally fine, but 29 out of 40 for 7.9 yards a target is I think that catch rate's going to come down, if anything. Sorry.
Well, they've used, or at least earlier in the season, they were just having him run the screens for the most part, except for that Cincinnati game where he had the nice catch down the middle. I don't know. I still believe in him. I'm still out. He's
a good player. I just think the stuff about him being the wide receiver 1 of that team, it's like, if that's true, cross them off. They're toast.
That's more where I'm landing than anything. It's not good. Tony, I watched tons of Zay Flowers in college. Okay, like he was on my radar.
I haven't. I don't know anything about prospects. What would I know about any of this? We just said he's a good player, but you think he's not the best. You said he dropped a pass. You hate him. Okay, whatever.
Well, I think that's our sign to move on. Let's go down to my backyard here. Falcons playing host to the Commanders. Very kind of intriguing game. I don't think either of these teams are particularly good, but I feel like this sets up as kind of a fun matchup in the early window. On Sunday, the Falcons are undefeated at home, and I think undefeated at home under Desmond Ridder, 2.5-point favorites here. And Washington.
Last week. I don't know how
he did made me eat my words. That I was about a week ago. I was jealous of people that had stashed Taylor Heineke. I've seen him get dropped by those very same people this week. So the Heineke watch is off for the time being. Going up against this Washington team, I mean, how much was it the Bears like waking up or just, I don't think the Bears can sustain like insane offensive production like that or anything, but it did feel like coming into the year, pretty simple. You have DJ Moore, throw the ball to him, and everything else can kind of just flow off of that. And that obviously happened against the Commanders last week. I don't know if the Falcons offense will be able to take advantage of it the same way, but what are you seeing here when it comes to the Falcons offense going up against a Washington defense that looks like it's a bit on its heels, even if it's well rested?
Well, I still don't think Ridder is good. I do think Taylor Heineke will be up at some point, but certainly not anytime soon. And even in that Houston game, it's like, A, that Houston defense had plenty of injuries in the secondary still. And B, I think there's probably a pretty significant leverage gained by the Falcons in that game because they got the Texans to jump off sides a bunch of times on offense. And it really can change a lot in a game just to get more favorable downs and distances for quarterbacks. It's part of why, while I would admit that he's good, I am not at all willing to consider Brock Purdy one of the best quarterbacks in the league, because if you actually look at his plays and then you actually look at the other plays that other quarterbacks have to make, it's like so much is just gimmies, because it's incredibly low stress setups. It's just really favorable situations where the offense has a bunch of advantages over the defense, and 5 yards, give a 1st and 5, a 2nd and 5 versus like a 2nd and 10, 2nd and 13, it's kind of things that Ritter might otherwise have been looking at. That difference can throw off or make entire drives. And I think that was a big part of the story against Houston. However, I am not going to look at the Washington defense and say like, oh, but these guys, they're smart. They're going to get it together. Jack Del Rio, he's no fool. Jack Del Rio is a fool, and sometimes it seems like he just kind of goes AWOL for weeks at a time. It seems like he I don't know what he's doing all week, but when you watch especially that Chicago game, it's like it doesn't seem like Washington had any plan other than just kind of like blitz a little, drop back coverage a little, and tell them to pounce on the passes. And I guess maybe that was informed by them looking too much at, I don't know, Chicago's first 2 games, when Fields probably was a beat and a half too late on a bunch of throws, and maybe Del Rio's like, look, if you just jump these passes, you're going to get it every time or something. And whereas what it actually turned out to look like was DJ Moore's 3rd touchdown on the left side, even against Kendall Fuller, who's a totally good corner who made a pretty good play on the ball. But you saw Justin Fields can make pinpoint accurate throws when he knows where the ball needs to go. And DJ Moore, once he's at the catch point, he's got it. Like I don't even remember a single time where DJ Moore lost at the catch point. Like you can maybe criticize some of his route running tendencies a little bit. I personally wouldn't. I just think he's a little less laterally dynamic than some other receivers, but he's so explosive vertically, and his hands are so strong at the catch point, and he's so good at shedding tackles that you don't want to put a corner one-on-one on him with a blitz and tell that corner to pounce, because that's, if the throw gets there, it's a wrap. And I think, it's one of those things that if they had calibrated it a little differently, maybe they would have realized that it wasn't such a good idea. I don't know. But even if there is some sort of excuse, whatever, some kind of insight as to why they did so poorly, I can't give the benefit of the doubt to Washington. So, nor would I give the benefit of the doubt to the Falcons offense. I still, of course, don't doubt them, but it's the run defense being so bad for Washington that I can't figure out, because that was something that even when they were kind of up and down or even outright bad the last couple of years on defense, they usually were pretty good against the run, and they were kind of just a no-show against the run against the Bears. So I don't know, maybe they had a sleepwalking game. They probably can't be that bad 2 weeks in a row, but man, Jack Del Rio is really good at, getting 50 cents on the dollar for the talent that he has on that defense.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, the front seven, like on paper, should be just absolutely dominant, and we're not seeing it. And then, the secondary on paper looks fine, and yet they're getting completely torched. So I don't know. Maybe that leads to a little bit of optimism for the Falcons pass catchers, namely Drake London and Kyle Pitts. I can't, in good conscience, recommend a Mac Hollins type.
What did you? Jonu's good though.
Oh yeah, yes he is. What did you think of the Van Jefferson trade?
I don't know, man. I don't know what the Falcons even have in mind for him to do. Like sit on the bench. I guess we could put Mac Hollins on the bench. Mac Hollins sucks. I would say Van Jefferson's better than him, but they also don't have targets to give out, And Mac Hollins, at least he can probably block. I mean, he's huge. I assume he must do something useful. I assume that's why he keeps ending up on offenses and getting snaps on them. But Van Jefferson is not a blocker. He's skinny. And he's not going to get open and, do much in the pass catcher. So I don't know what he's going to do there. I think he might just kind of, they might just kind of get him into the facility and then conclude like, never mind. And just kind of, you're over Scotty Miller on the depth chart. What is that? How do you feel, Van? That you made it. We're gonna give you 10 targets the rest of the year. So that's how I see it. He's gonna get like 10 targets the rest of the year on like 190 snaps.
Some good napkin math there. On the Washington side, I don't foresee a situation like last week where Washington gets down by that much so quickly. obviously that led to Sam Howell throwing it upwards of 50 times last week against the Bears. That was crazy. But it felt like one of the big takeaways on fantasy Twitter was you're going to throw that many passes, and yet there's a combined 10 targets to Dotson and McLaurin. What's going on?
Yeah, that's a large reason why I'm done with Howell. The book is not finally written on him. I mean, he is still a young quarterback. Quarterbacks his age, his experience level definitely have a history of going from bad, non-viable to some version of viable. But at the very least, it's going to take time. And I don't know why he would stay in a starting lineup for the amount of time that it'll take for him to get good enough. The whole reason I was able to justify optimism on Howell, aside from the price, the price being low kind of made it easier too. But the big thing for me was he was aggressive and he would strike downfield. And I love just the idea of a committedly aggressive high-low game, like go vertical in the passing game and run as a quarterback, get the safeties teetering back and forth. That's a good way to get the defense kind of jarred loose, make the big play happen. But what instead is happening is Howell is just kind of patting the ball and hanging on to it and then checking down. So if this, instead of chucking it deep to McLaurin 10 times a game, if they're going to instead give 8 targets to Curtis Samuel and 8 targets to Logan Thomas, then that's not a budget that works. You're not spatially expressing the offense in a way that is sustainably effective. You're closing the field on yourself, and the field will get smaller yet as defenses adjust to your tendencies. They're just going to fold themselves up unless they find some way to get the deep ball going. And I don't think the lack of the deep ball is just explained by the pass rush. I mean, Sam Howell is taking sacks on plays where he has plenty of time too. It's like, I know he's getting hit quick on some others, but you don't end up on a 99 sack pace unless you're screwing up a bunch as a quarterback. It's just about impossible. And he's at once holding onto the ball and not striking deep. That's not good. He's not seeing the field. He doesn't know what he's seeing. Something like that. He's too scared to cut it loose. I don't know what it is, but this will not work. He will get benched if he doesn't start throwing deep.
Yeah, the average target depth for him, just 8 yards. That's pretty much smack dab in the middle as far as the percentiles are concerned, in a 13.2% sack rate. So, yes, you can blame the offensive line, but I think the processing issue is pretty apparent. And he seems like overly, to this point, like he's been good at just being strong enough to maybe like shed a like first tackler type of thing, but you're playing with fire there if you're just going to trust that you can withstand a bunch of hits from NFL defensive linemen and just have them bounce off of you as a quarterback like that. He needs to get rid of it much quicker.
Yeah, I think part of the problem too is some quarterbacks can do this, but he hasn't shown the ability to both manage the pass rush and keep his eyes downfield. It's either one or the other. And so he gets sacked holding onto the ball, waiting for something that he thinks he sees, but it doesn't quite happen, and he gets sacked before it could anyway. And then the other version is he just sorry, I kind of lost my train of thought there, but he will try to strike downfield, and before it comes up, the times that he does sense the pass rush, he'll drop his eyes. So if you drop your eyes, you don't see Terry McLaurin improvising on the broken play. A play like Pat Mahomes improvising on a broken play, Aaron Rodgers on a broken play. They're watching downfield as they manage the rush. They know where the receiver is. It's like Howell, he has to lose sight of his receivers to evade the pass rush, and he can't do both at the same time for some reason.
Apologies to our listeners for our producer, my dog, chiming in. I guess the Washington
Bentley says
really...
it's Brissett time.
Yeah, he does. He knows
I'm
who has a dog in him and who doesn't. I'm going to blindly just hang on to Howell Hope just because I'm so freaking leveraged on him.
He is still young. I mean, he can get better. It's one of those long shot things, and it could get pretty ugly in the meantime.
Right, and cases like that, Washington's usually not the fertile ground for the seed to blossom. If anything, it can just, it's not going to end well knowing the history of that franchise. But I digress. So I guess bottom line here, I do like the Falcons in this one.
Yeah, I'll say Falcons.
Let's go to the NFC North. We got an interesting one here. We got the Vikings and the Bears. The Vikings 2.5-point favorites on the road. Justin Jefferson being out. I think we need to give the public a little bit of a PSA on why going crazy on KJ Osborne this week is a mistake.
Well, some people maybe have a legitimate use. If you need a receiver, having a guy who plays 60 snaps is a starting point, especially in a lot of leagues where there's not even that available. So KJ Osborne is going to play something like 60 snaps, and more snaps always means more targets over, some amount of sample size. It is a lock. So Osborne's target count probably will go up somewhat. It's just, I'm not going to say more than 9 on 59 snaps like against the Chiefs. That's I wouldn't call it a best case scenario. It's not really working for the Vikings offense, but that is the best case scenario. Like 9 on 59. He's not going to do that very often. But what you might get from Osborne is like 8 targets on 65 or 7 targets on 65. The problem, John, is from that point, everything else is bad news. And I know you can't really always do that thing where you're like, oh, if you remove this play, the sample turns to this number, because the guys, if they make a play, they actually made it. And you don't want to just say, this isn't convenient for my narrative, so I'm going to remove it. However, aside from KJ Osborne's Colts game last year, we've got a pretty big sample from this point. And I think we can also agree that Colts game was very weird. The Colts defense was on the field a long time, and they just they stopped playing defense in the second half. They stopped doing it. KJ Osborne was like running around like even he didn't know where the defense was. Just Chris Berman prime footage for doing the whoop 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 stuff. KJ Osborne doesn't know where the defense is. They're nowhere. They're just slipping past him, and he's like, well, how the hell did I do that? And I'm wondering the same question, KJ. And the answer actually is just that the Colts were tired and they were basically hallucinating on the field. Aside from that one game, we are up to 20 contests, I think. Let me run that again. 21 contests, I guess it is. Sorry. Osborne, outside of that Colts game, going back 21 games now, John. This is more than a season, well more than one season. Outside of that game, 63 catches for 659 yards on 100 targets. That's a 63% catch rate at 6.59 yards per target. And he did that on something just over 1,000 snaps. So that's awful. The 63% at 6.6 yards per target. I've talked a lot about like team baselines before. That is so far beneath the Minnesota baseline over that sample. That would have been below the baseline for the Davis Mills Texans. And so what that means is that the other receivers are producing at a level that's very easily distinguished from Osborne, and Osborne is producing way lower than everyone else on the team. And what that means generally is that the player is overexposed. Their usage is too high. The defense is ready enough for the ways that you deploy them that it's just a no-go when you try to do that. And that's been the case with Osborne for 21 games. And then the Colts game, the one admitted exception. So unless you believe he's going to peel off a bunch of that, Colts games to correct the sample, we know that this guy cannot play receiver in the NFL at a competitive level. It is what it is. He's a good blocker, but in baseball scouting, he's what we would call a 40 grade player. Like he's like a utility infielder who's a defensive specialist and has a bad bat. It's crap. It's useless. So he's not going to help the offense. If Osborne gets something like 10 targets in this game, even against the busted Bears defense, I would think that it means the Vikings are at serious upset watch. Like Kirk Cousins going to Chicago alone kind of makes me feel a little gross. The idea of him throwing to Osborne 12 times, it's like that could be 2 pick sixes. There's so much tip drill nonsense that happens when the ball goes to Osborne. It's crazy. He's just like a randomizer in the middle of the field that for some reason they won't try to bench.
And now, they don't really have a choice. So I suppose like that's really the only like driving factor for him having any fantasy utility this week is he's going to be out there. Like there's going to be snaps, but I think for me, provided that Addison is good to go, he's got an ankle. I think my like DFS strategy for this week, and it has like all of the makings of bad chalk. Like these are two bad teams, and like both of them could go into the toilet at the same time, and therefore like not really make the defenses pay for anything. But I think my kind of core DFS build for this week is Fields, DJ Moore, who's extremely cheap on DraftKings, and then Hawkinson and Addison as my run backs. I think that's going to be kind of what I lock in there, and everything else is kind of up for negotiation. But I'm in on this game, even if it is potentially like blow up chalk. But one chalk guy that I'm not touching is going to be Osborne.
Fair enough. I didn't realize he got so chalky. I don't know his price. There is a price that I can see the justification for Osborne in DFS.
It's under 5K.
Yeah, I'd need it to be like 3,600 or something like that, and I'm guessing he's a little higher than that. And I guess the ownership would be higher than it would make it worth it for me. But I do love Addison. I am a little worried that the Vikings offense just completely falls apart, though, without Jefferson, because TJ Hawkinson's numbers are already awful. He's still in the basement. It's not his fault. It's O'Connell's fault, but Hawkinson is still killing them. And now defenses don't even have to care about Jefferson. So I don't know. I'm worried about Cousins in this game. Love the Bears side. The Vikings defense sucks.
And then what do you make of the Bears running back situation? Because everybody got hurt last week in Washington. We saw some Kari Blossom game, which I always appreciate, but
I appreciate that. Yeah, John was more of a running back at Vanderbilt than Roschon Johnson was at Texas. Not even making it up. But
that's true.
Blossom game should, probably not be a running back in the NFL. It's a little different when you're talking Vanderbilt in their few competitive games, whatever, 6 years ago. So it's tough. I think you have to separate the question of what makes the most sense for the Bears from the question of what they're likely to do. And I think what makes the most sense would be feeding Deontay Foreman. I think it's so completely obvious that I doubt that the Bears will do it, because the Bears are not a well-run team and they won't do what makes sense. What they have an interest in, what Ryan Poles has an interest in, is making Roschon Johnson look like a good pick, even though he wasn't. And that Deontay Foreman is very clearly, very objectively a far superior runner to Roschon Johnson doesn't necessarily factor into the calculus at all for the Bears. I mean, Travis Homer's also a better runner than Roschon Johnson, and they haven't given him a shot to prove it, because he would prove it. And then they'd have to say, sorry, Ryan, your pick was bad. Travis Homer's better. So is Deontay Foreman. And Ryan's like, I don't really like that so much. Can we go with a different way? And what you'll get is Roschon Johnson until something bad happens. And admittedly, I don't think anything too bad is going to happen with Roschon Johnson. I mean, I don't think he has any fumbling history, and he's, totally good at fullback stuff, which is what I said he was all along, but he can't run and he can't elude people. So if they go with Roschon Johnson, it might be useful in fantasy. He can catch passes. He can catch checkdowns really well. The Vikings defense definitely sucks. I would probably say, for instance, that Roschon Johnson is better than, Brian Robinson, that kind of player. And I would admit, Brian Robinson can do something against this Vikings defense too. So if Roschon gets the snaps, he should be pretty good. But if they go with Deontay Foreman or even Travis Homer, they would get a lot more on the ground. So the thing is, I think Fields sets up well enough, and I'm concerned enough about the Vikings offense that the Bears shouldn't really need run game explosiveness like they could get from someone like Herbert when he's healthy. Like, that shouldn't really be necessary to win this, in my opinion.
No, I'm all over the Bears in this spot. I think that they're going to get it done. I'm kind of honestly surprised that the Vikings are favored here.
They suck, dude. They're terrible. I hate
they are. And now that JJ's out, it's just like, what are we even looking at?
It's going to be a circus.
Facts. Hard to out circus the Bears, but for 1 week, maybe they will do that. Tyler wants to know, Burrow or Stafford? Burrow home against the Seahawks. Stafford home against the Cards.
Hey, Tyler. Man, this is tough. I feel like Stafford's due for some like positive regression, some good luck in his numbers, because I feel like he's played so much better than his numbers appear. But John, did you have any solid sense of whether you think Burrow is back, or do we think that it was like kind of a Cardinals thing? I think I would go with Burrow. I'm I'm surprised at how long I'm having to think about it.
Like last week was such a decimation of my priors when it comes to the Bengals. You have Higgins out. They've been stuck in the mud basically the entire season. Had just gotten blown out by the Titans, and then that happens. And they figure out, hey, it's a good idea to throw it to Jamar Chase a lot. And I think in this setup at home against the Seahawks, I probably still lean Burrow. I definitely catch your sentiment when it comes to Stafford, and he does play the Cardinals of all teams this week, and it's at home. And Kupp is back and looks good, so it's really tricky. Like we have them as QB 8 and 10 respectively on our rankings, so it's
Sorry
really
for sorry Tyler for probably making this just harder for you. But,
yeah.
Okay, how about this? I feel like you can feel good about whichever way you got to go. FOMO happens to all of us, making the wrong choice, even when you make kind of the right process. It's a risk, but I don't think you should stress too much about who you go with here. You maybe could lean on something like I don't know, if the other person has Kupp and Nakua, maybe then you lean Stafford or something. But my general answer is Burrow. I just think it's totally permitted to go with Stafford if you kind of just feel like it.
Yeah, that's fair. I'm gonna have to pick a side here when it comes to what the Bengals game from last week means, and knowing what we know about the Bengals over the last two seasons, that's more in line with what we can expect than maybe the
if
first
Burrow's
time
healthy.
season.
If Burrow's healthy, then it's easily the choice. I can't tell if I'm getting like a little ahead of things by assuming he's fully back, but I would probably go with Burrow.
Yeah, it again close, but we are in agreement that Burrow is the play between the two of them this week. And let's go on and talk about that game a little bit further. We got the Bengals as 2.5-point favorites against the Seahawks coming off the bye. They kind of had two bye weeks in a row, right? Because they played the Giants on that Monday night game in week 4. So they've been chilling for a little bit.
They're getting the first seed treatment right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think man, this is tough. I can't figure out the Seahawks, man. Especially their defense. I can't figure out if it was just kind of a Daniel Jones thing where they looked good. Because in the first 4 games, I thought the Seahawks pass defense looked just awful, and in a way that I couldn't entirely dismiss on the basis of like Tariq Woolen missing the 1 or 2 games and Witherspoon missing 2 or 3 like he did, and a lot of training camp. I still don't trust the Seahawks coverage. I also don't know what to make of Jamal Adams being involved. Like that seems like a pretty substantial transformation to make to your defense. Like you have to accommodate Adams so much. It might look totally different with him on the field versus when he isn't. So he was out until last week and before he promptly concussed himself. So I have no idea what I expect of the Seahawks defense. I think they got some good personnel. I haven't been able to anticipate the results in a long time, and that makes me nervous. But the Bengals defense, I definitely think is good. Yes. I guess I should see what's going on with Charles Cross these days. Damian Lewis could be out too. Looks like Charles Cross might be back at least, so that would be nice. He's a good looking left tackle. Man. I guess I expect the Bengals defense to have a little bit of an upper hand on the Seahawks. I don't know. I don't have any good evidence of that. I just think highly of Trey Hendrickson. I think a guy like DJ Reader is always tough. I'm really high on Miles Murphy. I don't understand why they're kind of slow rolling him. Just cut him loose. I know Hubbard's on the other side, but get Hubbard playing defensive tackle or something. I don't know. Figure it out. Get Murphy on the field. Those kinds of guys I think could be tough for the Seahawks line. And if Lewis is out for the Seahawks, that's quite a lot to not have against Reader specifically. So I'm a little worried for Geno. I think that Lou Anarumo might have a pretty good game plan here. And I don't know. I guess I'm a little worried that this might be a little bit more sluggish of a game than the amount of like fantasy talent on these two teams between like Metcalf, Lockett, Higgins, Chase. It kind of feels like it should be a shootout. I don't know if it will be, at least for the Seahawks side. I worry about their offense in this one.
So beyond beyond Chase, if Higgins is out again, do you take any stock in Irwin from a fantasy perspective, getting all the targets that he did a week ago?
Not really. I think we can just say with him, it's like he is exactly as good as a receiver needs to be to catch 8 passes against one of the very worst defenses in the league, and that's 8 catches for 60 yards is not even good. 80% catch rate at 60 yards a target is not good on a day that Burrow finally got going. So if anything, Irwin was already kind of being the KJ Osborne of the Bengals offense in that game. And yeah, I don't know if Iosifus is any good. I don't actually think he probably is, but I bet Kwame Lassiter Jr. is better than Trent Irwin. So I don't see anything with Irwin. No.
Stanford or Princeton, the classic football debate that we all love to have.
Hey, Tyler Boyd, I still think is good, and his numbers were lagging in that game too. So I don't know if the Seahawks roll a bunch of coverage at Chase in the spots where Chase was getting loose last week, then maybe Boyd can get going. I don't know, but Chase, you don't worry about either way. I mean, I would put his over under at like 120 yards here.
He's so strong. God, guys bounce off of him. It's insane. I love watching him play. But yeah, I'm on the Bengals here. I actually went to Cincinnati for the first time last week. A nice little town. Saw the stadium.
Nice. I've never been in Ohio. I don't know if I really plan to.
It's fine. But yeah, I thought Cincinnati, I give it a solid B. Solid B of a town. Let's go on over elsewhere in Ohio. This is now the Ohio cast segment. We got the Niners going to Cleveland, face the Browns. I think, the Browns are coming off the bye, but we still aren't totally sure what Deshaun Watson's situation is.
Yeah. Man, that trade and that contract. It's weird, the whole situation. It seems like Watson's just kind of saying, I'm not going to play, and Stefanski doesn't even really believe that he's hurt, or at least doesn't believe that he's hurt enough to sit out. And that's strange if so, because, it's really long list of things wrong with Deshaun Watson, of course, but toughness had never been one of them. And he came back from an ACL tear in like 7 months at Clemson. It's never been an issue for him. If anything, Watson has always been a gamer, and this is not like gamer stuff. Assuming Stefanski is kind of correctly reading into things and fairly describing the situation, it just is odd. And I don't know, maybe Watson has gone insane in his isolation and alienation and has like become a more erratic version of himself. I don't know. But PJ Walker cannot play in the NFL. I don't know who I'm trying to think of a worse starting quarterback. It's like Zach Wilson at his lowest points is PJ Walker at his best. Like it's horrendous how bad PJ Walker is. Not an NFL quarterback at all. Not even like a quarterback 3 in the NFL. He's not a top 100 NFL quarterback. I am not exaggerating anything. So that fact alone means they're going to lose by a lot. And I don't know how much. I don't know what the 49ers need to do. I mean, they could probably go out and give Jordan Mason 45 carries and win this game by 10 points. So yeah. I don't know. It's kind of dreary. The Browns are blown up. Kevin Stefanski, I mean, I think he's probably an exactly average NFL coach in this environment that we have, but that is such an indictment of the coaching pool in the NFL at this point, if that's the case, because Stefanski, I mean, it's hard, the definition of mid at best, like he just has nothing other than kind of like whatever the team was going to do anyway. Like maybe he's just good enough to not screw up an otherwise okay team, but that's the very most he's capable of. This team sucks. Their defense can play gutsy at times still. So, the 49ers got to account for Myles Garrett basically. But aside from that, it's just kind of a laugher.
Yeah. I mean, we've seen the line creep up. Obviously, Watson's murky status playing into it. But this was 5.5 earlier this week. Now I'm looking at 7 over at DraftKings in favor of the Niners. I'd take the Niners up to like 9.5.
I'd take them up to like if PJ Walker is playing Niners by 28 at least.
So I guess from the fantasy side for San Francisco, it does feel like there's kind of an annoying thing for us where it's player X is weak. Like last week was obviously George Kittle's, Brandon Ayuk and Debo Samuel don't really do much. Other weeks it's been Ayuk with Debo not doing much. Other weeks it's obviously been Christian McCaffrey crushing. He's obviously the most stable one. You're obviously not really thinking about moving him to your bench or anything like that. But when it comes to those top three pass catchers in San Francisco, is there one setup in particular here that favors one of Kittle, Ayuk, or Debo, or do you think we see a more balanced target distribution this week?
If there's a balanced target distribution, I think it would be the result of kind of pulling the starters because the game got out of hand. I think the week to week, blow ups switching from player to player in the 49ers offense, I think that's a matter of intent on the part of Shanahan. I think it's part of his disciplined approach to play calling sequencing. Like he's always very acutely aware of what he and his offense have put on the field, like what play calls he has called in what situations in previous games, because he does correctly. This is something that Shanahan does better than anybody, and it's something that a lot of other lesser coaches don't do at all, and it's why the gap exists largely. Shanahan asks himself the question, what does the defense think that I am going to do? What do they see from where they are sitting, and are they right? Like, if they have I shown enough of my hand for them to know that I might do this, and if so, he'll think of something else. He'll go the other way, or better yet, he'll use the prior look to bait the defense into thinking the same play is happening, and then he runs something totally different. So Shanahan's really good at that stuff, and I really do think that as much as certain matchups suit Debo or Ayuk or Kittle more than other defenses, if Shanahan wants it to happen, he'll make it happen. And I think the switching the player each week is part of that, keeping the unexpected, keeping the ambush, having the advantage of not stating ahead of time what the element of surprise. Sorry, having that. Part of it is because he designs the offense to switch the threat from week to week, so you never know what to game plan for. In this game, I don't think he's going to need to use that many of his, he's not going to use an ace up his sleeve in this game because the Browns aren't threatening. He saves those for games like the Cowboys and in other situations where it's called for. This just isn't a case like that. But similarly, it's like, why would you put Debo out there to take like 8 hits against a team this week? So I could see it being like they try to score quickly through the air, especially since they might get short fields, and then just kind of run out the clock the rest of the game, let the Browns dig their own hole. And I think it's, I would sooner say Ayuk or Debo than Kittle, but I kind of feel like, I don't know. I think it's going to be like a little bit less of a game for Purdy than some other weeks. Like I think he's going to play like 3 quarters basically at most. And I don't know if they're going to get more than like 5 targets to any one player as a result.
Okay, interesting. So this could it's like a dominant win where there's no real like fantasy standouts, at least in the passing game when it comes to San Francisco.
Mm-hmm. I would be shocked if PJ Walker can start this game and the Browns not give up a touchdown on offense. That would truly shock me.
Yeah, we got to find odds for that. Have to. But either way, I think the Niners roll in this spot. I expect that line to continue to climb. We've got kind of an interesting one down in Houston this week. We've got the Texans going up against the Saints. The Saints obviously just pantsed the New England Patriots at up in Foxborough 31-0, I believe it was. Does that say more about New England than it does about New Orleans, or what level of credit do we need to give the Saints?
I think it's a little complicated in that the Saints still can't play on offense, but their defense is really good, and the Patriots are so incredibly mangled on offense at the moment that it was one of those things where I think the Patriots could still compete against, 20 teams in the league, but any team that has a defense as good as the Saints, they can't. Like they just, especially with all the injuries that the Patriots had on defense, if the Patriots defense had been healthy, then they still would have had a shot in that game because Derek Carr is so bad right now. what's tough for me to figure out is, can we expect Carr to get better over the course of the year? Like, are his struggles at all related to a new system and the growing pains that come with that? I feel like it's kind of possible. I definitely would expect him to do better next year, than I would this year with the system. But I just don't know. Even if it is true that he gets better, it's like maybe this is not the time that it happens. And I definitely expect DeMeco Ryans to outthink Pete Carmichael, whoever it is that's kind of running the Saints offense. The Saints are also, I think, inviting some trouble on themselves by, it seems like they're benching Trevor Penning for James Hurst. And I get it. I don't really like Penning either. I as a character, he seems really annoying and lame, but he is super athletic. He's huge and he's super athletic. And you drafted him wherever you did in the first round. You bought the ticket to this ride, like why are you yanking his playing time when he's still in a developmental phase, especially as if like, oh, we're on such a good Super Bowl track. If it wasn't for Trevor Penning, it's like, no, you're not going anywhere. Who do you think you are? Just leave Penning at left tackle, get Hurst at guard or something if you really need to. But when you introduce turnover on the offensive line like that, and to do it, you stop the progress of a recent a high first round pick at that spot. That's just the kind of thing that a good team doesn't do. And it's something that when you make decisions like that as a team, it indicates that your reckoning will come. Like you are going to hit the fan soon. And I think the Texans are clearly a better run organization, much better coaching. I think that the Texans win this. And the only question to me is like, how ugly does it get for Carr? I think if Carr and the Saints somehow score points, they could put some stress on Stroud. I don't know if Stroud's really been tested against a defense like this, especially if the Texans are forced to throw it 40 times or something. But if they only have to throw it 30 times, I feel comfortable saying that the Texans would kind of control the tempo of the game.
And what do you make of Dameon Pierce starting to, the first couple weeks were pretty rough. Still hasn't scored a touchdown since week 3, but he's seen 20 or more carries in each of the last 2 weeks. That has to be rather encouraging for those who drafted him, no?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of the offensive line injuries and just sort of not the greatest schedule either. He caught the Colts before Buckner got hurt. The Jaguars defense certainly better than I expected. Still don't have a sense of the Steelers' run defense at all, but the Falcons' defense looks pretty good. I think Pierce is a good player. I'm just kind of willing to believe that based on his rookie year. And the Saints is not the get right spot, granted. It's the bye week and then week 8 against Carolina. It's tough though, like you were kind of getting at for his fantasy investors. It's like you don't really have until week 8. You kind of need to start getting some wins now, and 2 more losses. It's like how much are you even in the picture at that point? But I think Titus Howard getting back last week. Hopefully the offensive line settles in. I feel comfortable saying week 8, but yeah, I don't really know how Pierce is going to get going against the Saints because their defense is strong. Their defense is not a question. It's only the offense that's so bad for the Saints.
Yeah, I'm thinking high volume, low efficiency. You just need a touchdown. So that kind of just puts him in flex. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't mean to diminish his chances of a touchdown. And if anything, I think he's due for some significant positive regression there. But, the better Carr does in this game, the worse I feel about Pierce, in addition to I'm concerned either way, of course.
And then I've noted some hand wringing on Twitter about Chris Olave's recent production. We still have him as wide receiver 10 for this week. What do we do with him?
He's open. I don't know what to make of this toe injury that he's listed on the injury report with, but the basic deal with Olave is that his catch rate is lagging because of poor quarterback play. Like last year, he caught 72 of 119. This year, he's catching only 58%. He operates really far downfield a lot of the time and sometimes on some very ambitious routes. So the more ambitious the route, the lower the catch rate will trend. In other words, I don't know if Olave is going to be at least not in this offense, something like a 66% catch rate guy. I think he's going to be more like 62, 64, but he'll, I think, at least be that. And you got to understand, Derek Carr is playing so badly right now. Even last week against the Patriots with their completely, annihilated secondary, Carr still struggled. It was still a difficult environment for the receivers to produce. So I do think going to Houston, playing Jacksonville and New Orleans, playing the Colts in Indianapolis, those are settings that suit Carr better than any road environment, especially a Foxborough type place. But like we just saw in the first 3 weeks what Olave does when the Saints offense is vaguely on schedule. So it sucks when a great player is denied opportunity, but Olave is completely inevitable. This is a category of player who will never be down long.
No, I don't think so either. So I'm not worried about him, even if the rest of the Saints offense is a little bit sus, to say the least. Let's get on over to Jacksonville. We've got the Jags hosting Indianapolis. Indianapolis has not won there since 2014, Mario.
Huh, that's weird. Well, Jags are still bad on offense is how I see it. So working from there, the health of DeForest Buckner might determine a lot of this game. I don't think the last 2 weeks anyway, that Buckner has been particularly close to healthy. When he is healthy, totally changes the course of an entire game. He dictates the overall game plan of an offense. And to have a player that important at less than 100% takes it away from a defense faster than almost any other guy playing less than 100%. So it looks like he must have been back last week. I know against the Rams, Buckner only played 19 snaps, but he played 47, which led the Colts last week. I think that with Press Taylor still being a terrible offensive coordinator, and I had to watch that whole London game, so I got a little better idea of what I think specifically Press Taylor is awful at. It's basically everything, but certainly it's that he has a couple staple plays that are just inconceivably bad in their theory, and it's this halfback dive that he runs out of shotgun with Travis Etienne over and over. And this is why Travis Etienne's yards per carry is so low too. They do this play where it's a halfback dive, but it's not quick hitting. It's not like snap, step, hand it to Etienne. It's like snap. Then they take a beat and a half, like they're setting up an RPO, but they don't actually run an RPO. They just hand it to Etienne, and it's not a draw. They don't get the draw function by setting up as if it's pass protection and letting the defense wash pass. They set up as a run block and then wait for a while to hand the ball off. It's completely ridiculous. And they do it out of shotgun 4 wide. So you don't even have like edge setting blockers to help. Absolutely ridiculous. Completely. I don't have words for how stupid of an idea this play is. And it's the play he runs the most. So until Press Taylor is fired or somebody says like, you got to stop running that stupid play. You have to get it out of your playbook. And if we see you running it again, you're in trouble. Like that's what they need to tell them. Not one time, not any scenario does it make sense to run that play. It cannot work. It's just a ridiculously stupid design. And that's why it fails. So maybe the data has come in enough. Maybe Taylor can see like, oh, the splits when we run this play aren't so good. Maybe I should do something else. If that's what it takes, then please someone get him this information so he can figure it out finally. In the meantime, I see no reason to give him the benefit of the doubt. I see ETN running into DeForest Buckner over and over and over. Trevor Lawrence running plays that the defense already knows from unfavorable downs and distances. And I think Shane Steichen is twice the coach that Doug Peterson is. So Gardner Minshew or not, I think that the Colts are really dangerous here. And I think the Colts are going to win.
Yeah, give me Indianapolis with the points for sure. I mean, you can get that at 4.5 at a bunch of places. On the Indianapolis side of the ledger, how's the shape of the offense change with Minshew being the quarterback? And then, of course, with the reintroduction of Jonathan Taylor last week, Zach Moss obviously crushed last week. How does that recalibrate?
Well, it's good to see Moss do so well, but it really was a poor showing by the Titans defense to let Moss get that long touchdown run. We've seen Taylor make that run before, but it's with a lot of people in frame chasing him, and then he runs away from them. As Moss, it was just like the whole defense just walked off the field. So weird showing. You don't really see that from the Titans' run defense. Somebody just really screwed up their gap really badly, and might get like benched for it. But I feel like we had enough data on Moss, even this year, even with the Colts specifically, even when he was doing well with the Colts last year in that final month. Moss does not peel off 40-yard carries. It's just not something that he does. He grinds it out, and he's really good at it. But Taylor is the long-range shooter. So if a play like that is going to happen again, it's not going to happen with Moss. It's just fact. It's not happening. It's Taylor or it's nobody. And Taylor, when the BABIP, so to speak, drops on Moss, the idea that like, oh, they're interchangeable, that will fade in a matter of probably one drive. There will be one drive where, Moss, he's got 4 carries for 11 yards or something, and they give Taylor 4 carries, and he like takes them the whole length of the field, and that's just a wrap. And then from that point, we're going to see Taylor 35, 40 snaps a game, and Moss 20, 25 snaps a game. Maybe not as soon as this game. I mean, the Jaguars defense is playing pretty well, but I don't know. I feel like Shane Steichen is going to find some way around this Jaguars defense, and I think Minshew's just good enough that we can expect the Colts to kind of like stay on their toes and deal with the jabs as they come in and spot an opportunity. Might be Taylor, might be in the passing game a little bit. Like Josh Downs has gotten going a little bit. Kind of optimistic for him. We were talking about Alec Pierce, and I still think he's a good player. It's just he's stuck in the difficult position of being a guy who, because he runs so far downfield, it's a downward pressure on his target per snap rate, and it's also a downward pressure on his catch rate. So he's always doomed to catching like 54% of his targets at best. The trade-off being he can do big damage on that 54%. But then Anthony Richardson makes it a run-heavy offense just as a matter of design practicality, but also doing like the RPO kind of stuff that the Colts are doing with him, and with Richardson being such a terrifying run threat, it kind of just it pulled the defense downward in the middle of the field, and it made it really easy to get the ball to Downs and Pittman. So it wasn't just those inherent difficulties that Pierce has already taken on. It's that these other guys are they're just running really easy routes against the defense in comparison. Minshew doesn't have that same rush threat that Richardson does, so I don't know if Downs and Pittman will be quite as open as they've been. And maybe Minshew, because Pierce will not be as relatively difficult to get the ball to as with Richardson's case, maybe that gets Pierce going a little bit. I definitely think Pierce against what's his name? Let's see, Darius Williams, he's kind of a gamer, but he's only 5'9". He can run with Pierce a little bit, but if he's in single coverage and that ball is up, 6'3", Pierce is getting it. Similarly, Trey Herndon, I don't think he can run really. He's like a downward crashing corner. He can't run vertically. So there are ways to get Pierce going here, and I kind of feel like he's due. I feel like the Jags are going to try to stop the run game, and Steichen will spot a weakness that they might give up in trying to do that.
With Pierce, I think there's reason for optimism. I think the talent's obviously there. I just worry with the role that you were speaking of, where he's, average depth of target, 16 yards, way down there. And Minshew I like Minshew. I think he's a great backup, but I don't feel like he's super attuned to like looking deep down the field. So I'm looking at a lot of Pittman and a lot of Downs in the tight ends here.
That's true, but again, like with Richardson, with Minshew not being the RPO threat that Richardson is, I think some of the throws that were easy for Richardson to make will be more difficult for Minshew, and so that's why I'm saying like he might look to Pierce because it's not as relatively difficult to get Pierce the ball when you're Minshew as it is when you're Richardson. And for what it's worth, DJ Chark had his best stretch in the NFL with Minshew as his quarterback, and Minshew Chark I think is more similar to Pierce than Downs or Pittman in that like he pretty much lived on the sideline and vertically, and Minshew, he's practical. He at the time was like, maybe this isn't my game. Maybe I'm not a downfield gunner, but DJ Chark's my best option, so I'm just going to kind of spam it.
Yeah, so maybe that will wake up, and Minshew obviously has some history there in Jacksonville, so a little revenge game possibly. But
Yeah.
either way, I'm on Indy here fairly strongly, actually.
Yeah, me too.
I got some doubts on the Jags. They are a frustrating bunch.
They suck.
The
They're
points
not good.
on Press Taylor were excellent. I appreciate you sharing those. Let's get on over. We got one more game in the 1 o'clock window, then we'll get to the 4 o'clock. Speaking Eastern time, of course. We got Panthers, Dolphins. Dolphins are 2 touchdown favorites in this one.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, I believe it. It's one of those things like when you're thinking of the spreads in your head before you see them. At least I kind of go to extremes, of course, and so I ask myself like Miami versus Carolina, like 27.5 probably, but I forget that in real life it doesn't work that way. It's 13.5 is more sane, and it's tough to just assume a team's going to win by 14. Even though I think the Dolphins will win by 28. It's tough to bet on 14 points, and yet I don't know what I expect to happen for the Panthers to get even that close. It's like Bryce Young, it's not going to happen. I'm sorry. And the run game is where I feel like Miami's defense is most vulnerable, but I don't know if the Panthers are really prepared to leverage that. I mean, the Miles Sanders thing was stupid. He's not that good. It was funny watching them in the offseason say like, we're just going to keep throwing him the ball. Yeah, we're going to make him a 3-down star. You'll see. You think he's not a complete back? Well, we'll just throw him the ball anyway. Well, how's that working out? It's not to spoil it for everybody. It's not really working, but Bryce Young, at least, he showed the ability to play against a prevent defense last week in a blowout, which really is a start. I didn't know based on the first couple games whether he was capable of even that. So it's something. I just don't know if it really matters a whole lot. And I think while the Dolphins defense is uneven, and I think it lacks key personnel at a lot of spots, Vic Fangio versus a confused and frightened rookie quarterback on the road, I don't think this is a good spot for Young. The toughest Dolphins corner, too, Kader Kohu, or however you say it, is a slot corner, which is where Adam Thielen has been so effective. And Adam Thielen has had a really good schedule lately. He was going against like Josh Metellus a couple weeks ago, and then whoever the backup slot corner is for the Lions last week. So this will be a much tougher matchup if they keep Kohu in the slot, and I think they will. And if Thielen's not there for the easy looks, Young is just, he's just left it stranded at sea, basically.
Yep. I think we're looking at a long day there, and that's a good detail there on Thielen and his matchup, because he's really the only thing that's working in that offense. On the other side of this one, we're at blowout risk, of course, but to get there, you got to put up points. So you're still feeling great about your usual Miami starters. You got to lock in Mostert, but what's the latest on Jeff Wilson? And while Devin Achane is sidelined, do we start to see Wilson kind of make his mark in this offense?
I don't know where Wilson is at. I guess it was a ribs injury that he had. I guess I would say 5 weeks to recover from a rib thing seems like enough time. So I'd expect Wilson to pop up, but I don't think they need him. I think Chris Brooks is better, but I guess Chris Brooks has a lot to prove in the meantime, whereas Wilson is a plug and play kind of thing as far as Mike McDaniel is concerned. Mostert is, of course, great fit in this offense. He's if he gets 8 carries, you start him, because those 8 could be 100. But yeah, in this game, they could use a guy like Wilson. Anytime they got a big lead, they could use a guy like Wilson to take the human shield carries, And since I don't see the Panthers doing a whole lot, I guess this could be a Wilson game if he is activated. I just would really like to see Chris Brooks get the shot, because I feel like he's good.
I'd like to see it too. Yeah, no, he definitely had some good stuff that he put on tape in college. I just have a lot more Jeff Wilson than Chris Brooks. So
Wilson knows the offense too. So it's to McDaniel, Wilson is like a free space kind of player. Like he's like, I don't have to worry about that. I can go look at this other thing now.
Yeah. So I don't know, but we'll get some time, I think, to see McDaniel experiment with the backfield depth on Sunday, because I don't think there's any way that the Panthers keep this close.
He's gonna be like pulling wings off of flies,
bending spoons with his mind, and so on. Let's keep rocking then. I have no idea what this game is. The Patriots and the Raiders. You know what? Anyone listening, you don't either.
I'll say it, John. It's bad.
Mm.
That's what it is.
I hope we can get an ending half as entertaining as last year's ending in this matchup, where Mac Jones got completely trucked on a game-losing play.
Yeah, I'll take the Patriots, though. I know Mac Jones has kind of fallen apart lately, but I do think he was playing well in the first 3 games, especially the Eagles game. And I've just seen too many times when teams fall into level of disarray that the Patriots have, it's impossible to evaluate the players. It's like you might as well just like watch them. I don't know. It's just not a football game, you know. It's like it doesn't look like a real offense. None of the things that happen look like football events. It's just kind of watching 11 guys get chased by 11 other ones and shoved around a bunch. It's made particularly bad by the offense's lack of speed. In the Patriots' case, when you have Juju Smith-Schuster on one leg, Kendrick Bourne, and 30-year-old Devontae Parker at receiver, the defense knows you cannot get to 12 yards downfield. They know it. They know you can't get there before they can get to your quarterback. And when they know something with that level of certainty, it's basically unfair. Like it's even against bad defenses, you know, it's like bad defenses are still NFL players. And if you tell the worst defense to play before you run it, they'll make you look bad for it. So with I don't know, Demario Douglas is hurt now, so who knows what's going on there. But at the very least, the Patriots can make their offense better by getting Juju Smith-Schuster off the field. Like they need to do it. Get somebody who can run anything at all in his spot, and that would help a lot. Playing 10 on 11 with the slowest remaining 10 in the entire NFL, not to mention with a beat-up offensive line, I would expect Mac Jones to fall apart if I had been told like those variables ahead of time. The Raiders' defense is so bad though, and their offense also unreliable to the point that I wouldn't assume they look okay against the even this battered Patriots defense. I think this is a setting where Mac Jones at least going against a somewhat fair kind of opponent, and the Raiders suck. It's not that bold of a prediction, you know.
I guess who sucks more. I guess
I think the Raiders do.
Right now. That's totally fair. Monday night doesn't really prove anything to me other than like the Packers have some problems.
Packers are real bad. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's tough scene for them. But I like the Raiders here just because it's at home. Our guy James comments that Belichick is a broken man. It's sad. I agree with the first part of that. I disagree with the second. I have no sympathy for the devil. I
would say Tom Brady is the devil and Belichick is merely one of those little guys with the forks.
Yeah, there's one of those goblin minions. The guy who's
devils.
He's at the donut machine that Homer Simpson is strapped to in hell, and he's confused as to why Homer can just not stop eating the donuts. It is Treehouse of Horror season now that we're into October, so everyone do yourself a favor and watch the first 10 or so Treehouse of Horror episodes from The Simpsons. You know where to watch them. Do it. Let's go. Sneaky, very interesting game, especially in the afternoon window where we kind of have truncated action. Lions Bucks. I'm very interested in this game. The Bucks obviously have the good record so far. They're coming off the bye, but I think my lean here is that when they play a good team, like an actual good team, they're going to lose. And I do put the Lions in that category as dangerous as that may be of a place to be. But I think the Bucks will give them a good fight here. But I do think the Lions ultimately prevail by more than a field goal.
Fair enough. I don't mean to make the Buccaneers sound like world beaters or anything, but I think the Lions have gotten pretty badly overrated. Like even in a year that is the weakest NFL year I can remember, literally ever, I have real issue with a team like the Lions being listed in power rankings top fives. Like, man, if they are a top 5 team, we're in hell. That's awful. They're not that. They're an average team in a competitive year. They're like a top 15, top 16 kind of team in a competitive year. Maybe this year is so uncompetitive that they're a top 5 team. I don't know. But going on the road against a defense that I think is quite good, I have no trouble fading Jared Goff right here. I'm sorry. I am not intimidated at all. I think Goff goofs big time here. And I think Baker Mayfield outplays him. Not saying much, granted. I'm thinking something like maybe 230 yards and 2 touchdowns for Mayfield as a good case scenario. But Goff, I think, will struggle to have a positive. I think he'll have more turnovers than touchdowns, and I think he'll struggle to, at the same time, complete 66% of his passes at more than 7 yards a target. So, like Kalijah Cansey's back, that could matter quite a bit. Not that I really have a great idea how, but he did stuff at Pittsburgh. He's a first-round pick. Can't hurt to get him back. Jamel Dean is back. Is Carlton Davis on IR, or is he off the injury report? I gotta check this.
Give me 1 second.
I got it here too.
He's
off the injury report. Yeah. Okay. Carlton Davis, Jamel Dean, Kalijah Cansey haven't been healthy since week 1. This is a tough defense that the Buccaneers have, and Goff on the road outdoors. I don't know. I think the Bucs get it.
Well, I was willing to reconsider. Now I absolutely must. The Bucs are
or at least they cover.
Bunch. Yeah, they keep
good
this
shot.
one within the number, especially if you can find it at 3.5. I think it's 3.5 points bet. So just for everyone's edification. On the Lions side, unpacking the fantasy angle a little bit more. Jahmyr Gibbs is questionable. Amon-Ra St. Brown, I think he's going to be able to play, but at what percentage?
We ever hear what his actual abdomen injury was? Like, I feel like sometimes we hear specifics, like it's a abdominal strain, or it's like a whatever it could be. But just abdomen non-specific was kind of weird to me.
I've injured my thorax, but
I guess he's fine. I mean, I guess it can't be that bad if he's doing practice on Wednesday.
Right. So trending in the right direction. Any expectations for Jameson Williams? I'm going to ask you every week.
Not against this defense, not in this setting. He's basically like flea flicker dependent. And Goff, I mean, I'll give them this much credit. They keep finding new ways to run flea flicker type things. Like, they run so many trick plays for that guy. That's another thing. Jared Goff is easily setting the record for the most dependency, the greatest share of his production relating to trick play setups. You can only do that stuff for so long, and I don't think this is the setting where it's they might need to lean on it anyway, but it's not good to need to do it. It's good to be able to do it, and when you have the defense on their heels. But if you're like, we got to get a flea flicker to get it past the 50, like, you're already like you're working from a disadvantageous position to do that. St. Brown should be fine, I guess, like, at least in fantasy PPR especially. But man, him going against let's see, who would it be? I know earlier in the year they were, let's see, I think it's going to be mostly Antoine Winfield on him, and honestly, that might be the last guy that St. Brown wants to see.
Yeah, he's tough. He'll get red in your face. St. Brown obviously tough, and we'll get red.
He's like a safe version of St. Brown. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So that could be a fun little X's and O's matchup to key in on Sunday. But yeah, I guess we like the Bucs in this one.
Maybe the under.
Yeah, I guess
it's already down 2 points though. It opened at 45.5, is already down to 43.5.
Yeah, let's keep rocking. We've got the Cardinals and the Rams. This one in LA. Does 7 points strike you as a little high here in favor of the Rams?
No, in part because I just think Stafford, when he's got Cooper Kupp, and now not that I understand exactly how Nakua has done all this or what it all means going forward, but if Cooper Kupp is back, that's almost enough in itself for me to believe in 5,000 yard, 40 touchdown Matt Stafford. Having Nakua being even vaguely what he's been, Tutu Atwell maintaining vaguely the course that he's on, I Yeah, I think the Rams, if they don't win by 7 or more, it's because they just started playing prevent like halfway through the third quarter, and the Cardinals put up, I don't know, 14 to 21 points from that point to the end of the game. And the Rams, if they don't score any points, could give up the cover there. That's just how I see it. Obviously, I could be just totally wrong about everything, but that's how I see it. And I don't know what to think of the Cardinals playing from a catch-up script. They've done a great job. Whoever's running that offense, whoever's responsible for getting Josh Dobbs to produce the way he does, truly all-timer stuff. I can't believe any of it. But it's also different to do that when the game is close and do it when you're down 2 scores. And I'm not convinced they can do that part.
Yeah, no, they're in rough shape if they're down by more than one possession. No question about that. How big of an impact do you think it is that James Conner is going to be missing some time here, and what is the recourse in that backfield? Obviously, we touched on Emari Demercado and Keontae Ingram a little bit earlier in the show, but your thoughts on them for this particular matchup?
Well, it probably sets up better for Demercado in terms of game script in this game, because he probably is the passing down guy. I say that, though, only in a way to acknowledge if Demercado is not the passing down guy, I don't know what he does even in theory. Like, he can't run. This whole thing that, a lot of people are committed to the idea that like running backs don't matter. You can just plug in any old one as long as they catch some passes. They're the same thing. Who cares? Demercado is not an NFL running back. He won't be on a team in a couple of years. And it's only because the Cardinals are not a talented team that he's even, on their practice squad, let alone their actual game plan. He couldn't run at TCU. Everybody could run at TCU. Zach Evans had like 7 yards of carry at TCU. Demercado was almost literally half as effective as a ball carrier. He was good as a pass catcher, but yeah, it's like, to me, he just seems like a hurry up, blowout back. Maybe like a slightly faster Daria Gumbawale, something like that. I don't know. He's faster than a Gumbawale. I don't mean to like take that away from Demercado, but I think the issue with him is he has no vision. The start stop, the processing, I have reason to believe they're all negatives. Whereas Keontae Ingram can at least run, and Keontae Ingram is an NFL athlete, NFL caliber athlete. I've seen a lot of people say like, "Oh, we know Ingram sucks because he has only like 30 yards on whatever 15 carries in the NFL." Come on, man. He's running in so many like goal line situations and just situations where the game has gone wrong, and that's why he's on the field, and situations like that. If you want to look at Ingram as a runner, just look at his college production and look at Demercado's college production for that matter. It's easy to see that Ingram is the better runner, and Ingram can pass catch too. It's not like he's bad at that. It's just Demercado can't do anything else. So it is, if Ingram is only a run specialist, then yeah, Demercado gets the benefit of the game script, but Ingram can catch passes if they want to leave him in. And I don't know what to make of Rondale Moore. I've seen some people saying like, "Oh, he's going to be the running back." I don't know. I doubt it. And to whatever extent Rondale Moore is at running back, that's almost directly at the expense of Demercado.
Oh no, I mean that would totally sap Demercado's usage. I'm not sure if I buy that necessarily, but I mean I'm in on the concept of it. I would love to see Rondale Moore get a bunch of carries, but
do something with them. My God.
Yeah, anything, please. But yeah, I think you laid out some really good points when it comes to the Rams for this weekend, and again, it's the Cardinals. If they're close after the first quarter, then I think it's going to stay close. But if they get down early, it could be a wrap pretty quickly there. So that's kind of how I see it going. But I think more often than not, when I'm running my brain simulations, it's the Rams just racking up tons of points and the Cardinals just kind of going into self-defeat mode as the game unfolds. Let's go Eagles-Jets. Eagles 7-point favorites on the road.
Yeah. I mean, Breece Hall is awesome. I guess there's something you can do with that, but I don't know against this team if that's the case. Like the Eagles, they have such strong run defense, like infrastructure, that they don't need to try to stop the run. And, if whatever the run can accomplish, it's that much more leaving Zach Wilson in harm's way. So if you can't hide Wilson with the ground game, I don't know how you really do anything. And the Jets defense, though quite good, I think especially with personnel like the Eagles have, I think you could play around it. Like even if DJ Reed, I don't know what his injury status is, but I'm sorry, 5'9" outside corner is a categorical issue against AJ Brown. Like you can't leave a 5'9" corner on AJ Brown. And if they were to leave him there, as opposed to putting Sauce Gardner on Brown, and also Brown can beat Sauce Gardner. I don't even think Sauce Gardner is like, I think Sauce Gardner is good, but I think he was badly overrated last year. He's not doing nearly as well this year. He's more of like a cover 3 corner than a true shutdown guy. And AJ Brown can break ankles too. It's not just that he hulks over everyone. It's like he can go laterally, and I don't know if Gardner can. So the advantage that the Jets normally have in the pass defense, I don't think it applies here. And we haven't really seen their run defense stay quite as good in a setting where their pass defense was hurting. Like sometimes when you spring a leak in one part, they start to shift things from another strength to try to take care of it. And sometimes you just end up creating 2 weaknesses. So I feel like the Eagles will look better on offense than maybe people expect here.
And then, looking at the Jets offensive side of things, a fairly significant injury this past week with Elijah Vera-Tucker going out for the year. I believe that was an Achilles injury. So, this could be a real long day for Zach Wilson.
Yeah, that sucks. That is a huge loss.
So, yeah, 7's a big number on the road, but I think the more that we've discussed it, I feel like
6
the Eagles
is totally in play, though. It's like Zach Wilson. If you're as far as backdoor probability goes, I feel like Zach Wilson's one of the worst indicators for it you can find at quarterback.
Very true. So yeah, already penciling in the Eagles to have this one back level on the spread, just thanks to Zach Wilson. We got 2 primetime games to hit as we wrap it up here. The Giants are on national TV again, Mario.
Good. We deserve it.
We do. They're playing the Buffalo Bills. The Bills are 14-point favorites. I can barely muster the energy to dive super deep into it. The Giants are just such a bummer.
That's a huge spread, and I feel like it's really easy to imagine a scenario where the Bills from start to finish totally dominate and still give up the back door there. But yeah, I'm not going to be, while I probably just wouldn't pick this game, I'm not going to say pick the Giants in any circumstances. I don't think.
No.
So certainly not to win, but I don't even know if I trust them to get 17 points, let alone 14 within the Bills. So I've mentioned before how I worry about the Bills offense when Stephon Diggs goes below 120 yards, which is a crazy way for them to build their offense. But setting that aside, I'm not terribly worried about it here. I feel like Diggs should be able to dust these corners, and maybe the Giants can sell out some way, kind of like they did against Justin Jefferson last year, and have some modicum of success doing it. I don't know. That seems to me like it's asking a lot. And even if they hold Diggs to under 100 yards or something like that, Josh Allen can just run on these guys. That's usually the solution for the Bills. When it goes well for them on a day that Diggs goes under 120, it's because Allen ran for 50 and 2 touchdowns. So if they need to do it that way, I think they'll just do it that way. James Cook should bounce back really big. The Bills should be comfortable.
Yeah, I believe so as well. And that they're just, even if Barkley comes back, I just don't really think that there's much to see here on the Giants side of the ledger. Let's finish it out. Cowboys, Chargers off the bye. Cowboys publicly humiliated last Sunday night. Do they bounce back here?
No. They're run too poorly. Brandon Staley is not a good coach, but he can't possibly be as bad as Mike McCarthy. And Dallas, their entire approach on offense is just unserious this year. Their inability to get CeeDee Lamb and Brandon Cooks going categorically means they are not a good team. Like if CeeDee Lamb and Brandon Cooks don't have substantially more production to this point, then the Cowboys, they're just non-competitive. The budget doesn't work. You can't budget the offense for the numbers to get high enough. It's completely a non-starter. So they could do a lot of things differently if they stopped following their intuition and just maybe doing the opposite. That would put them in a good spot. McCarthy, Schottenheimer, whoever's fault this all is, but they're not going to just get better. That they've already had easier matchups and blown it anyway. They're at a level of uncompetitiveness it might be worse than Press Taylor for all the crap I give them. I mean, Dallas has done just as bad, arguably quite a bit worse with their offensive management. So it is that bad. And when it is that bad, you can make even Brandon Staley look good. And I would definitely pick the Chargers to win this.
Speaking to Dallas's offensive struggles to this point, did you know that Brian Robinson has outproduced Tony Pollard in fantasy this year?
That must not have been the case before last week, right? Because Pollard was at least getting touchdowns. But yeah, I remember thinking, man, Dallas can't just keep doing this thing where they give 20 carries a game to Tony Pollard. Like you got to keep him in that 14 to 16 range and get some big plays out of them, and then give somebody else, Rico Dowdle, you give him the human shield carries. That's how you got to do it. And if you need Pollard to take all 20, 25 of those carries every time, it means your passing game is not producing enough, or it means you're logging like 80 plays per game. And it's not that. It's not that they're logging 80 plays per game. They just can't do anything in the passing game. And yeah, it's brutal. I think Tony Pollard I think he went into this year overrated, but I definitely attribute his lack of production to this point to kind of like a little bit the schedule, but mostly just McCarthy being a complete dodo. And I don't know. The Chargers are bad enough at run defense. I think you can imagine this being a bounce back game for Pollard. I'd be pretty surprised if it isn't. But even if he bounces back, again, the Dallas offense is not budgeting like enough. They don't have the ability to hit the number that they need to get to. And I'm not assuming the Chargers do that. I think they're quite poorly run also. But I think they are merely kind of poorly run, whereas I don't know how Dallas could be run much worse.
Yeah, so I like the Chargers here, getting points at home against the Cowboys. I think something's rotten in Dallas right now. We haven't been sunshine and rainbows on the Chargers much this season either.
They suck. I hate them.
Yeah,
but I have to pick them here.
Yes. And then coming off the bye, do you expect Quentin Johnston to get a little bit more involved now that they've had some time to kind of like reset?
I don't know, man. It should be easy. It should have already been easy to get him going more. But Staley, I think, has his hands on the offense, and I think he still has just a bunk theory of how offense is supposed to work in the NFL level. Johnston, if they ask him to run deep and get open deep, I feel like he can do it. Admittedly, the Dallas pass rush makes that a little challenging for this particular game, but the Josh Palmer thing is just ridiculous. There's no way Josh Palmer is more useful than Quentin Johnston. Even now with Johnson as a rookie, it's just it's a failure of a team prioritizing its usage. It's a team with the wrong understanding of what goals it should have. It's bad. Dallas is worse at all these things, which is why I think that the Chargers eke it out. But while I'm picking the Chargers to win this, I don't really understand why the over/under is going from 49.5 to 50.5. I could imagine this being plenty ugly for both offenses.
Yeah, I do as well. So I like the under in this spot. That's too high.
It's like the slate was just kind of like, we got to have a shootout somewhere. This one's got to be it, right? Like maybe none of them.
Yeah, just dangling it out there. But yeah, I don't see it either. So give me the Chargers here, and then assuming that Eckler is back, obviously you're gonna start him. But what are your expectations against this Dallas defense?
Well, if there's a smart play caller involved, I think you could do a lot with Eckler if you're the Chargers, and using him as a deterrent against Dallas's pass rush, especially like. Set up some screens that you haven't shown all year. Save those screens for a game like this. Set up Eckler on some easy catches. Let that pass rush wash itself out of the play and get Eckler behind them somehow. Just figure it out. Running will probably be tough, but I feel like Eckler probably catches 6 passes in this game. I'd like to think for a good amount of yardage, but it might not.
I'm feeling good about him. We have him as a top 10 running back this week, but not top 5. I think that's about fair as far as the projection goes for Eckler and his return.
He could catch like 10 passes. I mean, without Williams, it's not like Palmer's going to pick it up. So if Johnston can't or won't, it's Eckler. It's nothing.
Yep. Every Josh Palmer target is a policy failure.
Yes.
That's going to do it for us here on this edition of the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast. Always appreciate the lively comments section over on YouTube when we're doing the live stream. Some good fantasy banter going on there as always. So any podcast listeners, I definitely encourage you to check us out on the live stream as well every Thursday. But beyond that, big thanks to our sponsors over at Circa and Blue Wire. For Mario Puig, I'm John McKechnie. Thanks for listening.
Try RotoWire today, free for 10 days. Get our premium tools, rankings, analysis, and breaking news alerts. No credit card required. Go to rotowire.com/try.